Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
With Tech to the VO stars. George Whittam, founder of Source Elements. Robert Marshall, international audio engineer. Darren Robbo Robertson. And global voice. Andrew Peters. Thanks to Tribooth. Austrian Audio. Making passion heard. Source Elements. George the Tech Whittam. And Robbo and AP's international demos. To find out more about us, check theproaudiosuite.com.
Line up, ladies!
Here we go.
And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite, thanks to Tribooth. Don't forget the code TRIPAP200 to get $200 off your plosive again. And Austrian Audio, making plosives heard. See, I just did it again.
Those plosives are hot property this
Making
month.
plosives heard.
Oh dear. Very noisy. And speaking of noise, that's what we're going to talk about today, is noise, basically, in your studio. And it's something that we talk about, and I have no idea.
Sustained noise.
I have no idea.
Noise that drones on.
Not noise like radiators and things, but
Not random impacts or plosives or dogs.
Noise in your system.
noise floor.
Noise floor.
Noise floor,
The stuff
I think, is the word
yeah.
for this.
Yeah.
Indeed. Really annoying noise. Yes.
So when somebody talks about their noise floor, they always throw a number out. I see it in every Facebook group. My self noise, or my room tone, or my sound. The word I see a lot. My sound floor.
Mine is 8 inches. So yeah.
my sound floor.
And
I
hairy.
see that one all the time. Is minus 74. Right, and that's the number. Period. Right. First of all, what does it mean when somebody mentions a sound floor or noise floor or whatever terminology they mean? What does it mean?
Well, I don't know. See, this is the thing, because if you're talking about noise off your microphone, isn't it going to depend on how much gain you've got on the mic and all that sort of stuff? I mean, a noise floor of minus whatever means jack shit, depending on how much gain you've got.
It's all relative. It's all relative to the performance volume that you're putting into it. So
The
noise
signal.
floor,
Yeah.
the signal to noise ratio
noise.
is the thing, right? So if you're recording a whisper and you're always recording stuff that's whispering, your noise floor is way more critical than if you are doing video games and always yelling.
Yeah.
Because your preamp can be turned down, and now the ratio between what you are interested in, the yelling, the whispering, or in the case of yelling, is a lot louder than the noise that's inherent in your booth. And so now you want the biggest difference between the signal you want and the signal you don't want. And so it's always a ratio, really. But it's not expressed as a ratio, is it, George? It is expressed in
Decibels or a negative number.
Right.
And is
Right.
it RMS? Is it a LUFS number? Is it a peak? What is the number exactly?
and what is its weighting? And there's so
And
many
is
ways
there weighting?
to
And do we measure that? And does your software
Right.
know the difference? And does the person that's asking you the number know what any of this stuff means?
Exactly.
And this is a way that microphone companies use to hide the weenie and make their,
Confuse
their
people.
microphone
Yeah.
look a lot higher spec than it might be, especially when it comes to the weighting. The weightings can be very confusing.
Yeah. You might see A weighting or C weighting. Those are the two most common. Is
Yeah,
it
A,
C that more...
There is no B weighting. It's always A and C. What happened
Yeah,
to B?
is it C that emulates the human hearing curve, like the sensitivity to low versus high frequencies? Is that what C weighting is? I always get the two mixed
I think
up.
they're both based on the Fletcher-Munson curve.
The
I
Fletcher
believe.
Munson, yeah.
Yeah, I believe they're
Neither
both-
of us are saying that correctly.
Is that what you get when you've had a couple of cones? The Fletcher Munson?
A weighting mimics the human hearing, and C weighting is less selective.
C is more, let's just say, more broad and probably more sensitive to low frequency, right? So that's the less forgiving.
and high frequency too, because the Fletcher-Munson curve it's your smiley face
Right.
upside down. It's your sad face.
Right.
That's your
C weighting is less forgiving. So what happens is it's in everybody's software, they hit record, they get their room tone, right? They hit stop, and then they analyze it somehow. Like, because somebody asked them, what is the noise floor of your studio? That's what everybody is asked, as an actor, a voice actor. What is the noise floor of your studio?
The noise floor of my studio when my preamp turned off is phenomenal.
Exactly. What does it mean? What noise are we measuring? We've got so many sources of noise. We have the noise that emanates from the microphone, from the preamp, maybe somewhere else down the signal chain.
Some plugins?
You have
Some plugins create
a
a little bit of
plugin that you
noise,
might have
yeah.
forgot to turn off.
Waves, you got to turn it off.
That's right.
Literally, be careful, everyone out there. Waves literally has like 60 cycle noise because somehow that's vintage.
H compress out. You can dial in noise if you want to. Yeah, absolutely. And H delay, same thing. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question then.
Yeah.
So if I'm recording,
Poor AP, by the way.
and I come in,
I know.
yeah, exactly, and I come in. I've actually captured 4824, and I'm peaking at around about minus 18.
Okay.
Which is that's
So
pretty
pretty
low,
low
pretty
peaks.
low. So
Pretty low.
if I
Yeah,
capture at that level and I send that off, what is going to happen when they start compressing?
They're going to turn it up. So you, by peaking at minus 18, you have not helped your signal to noise ratio, because you have 18 decibels of space between those two that you've not used.
Yep. Okay.
Right. But
That
does he
makes
need
any
to use
sense.
all 18?
No, because then you risk hitting the wall.
right.
So, but you want to be more at like minus 6, maybe at least minus 10, minus 3. You start to sweat. Where's the sweet spot? I always try to get people to come in somewhere between minus 12 and minus 6. I think.
Yeah,
is
that's
a
the yellow
reasonable peak.
range
Yeah.
on most
Mhm. Yeah,
meters.
yellow
And I
range.
always say, if you're in the yellow, let it mellow. Right.
That's right.
If you're always in the green, it's a little lean. Increase the gain. That's my little mnemonic.
So yeah, you could turn your preamp up, and assuming that like that's going to pull the noise from the preamp will be less of an issue then, but then that will pull up all the background noise with it, because if you think about it, the noise of the volume of your voice relative to the noise of the room is a constant.
Yeah.
You're never going to change that. And if your preamp was perfect, then recording at minus 18 wouldn't make a difference, because it would all raise up in ratio. But by having your preamp at the right level, you're at least getting the most out of your signal to noise ratio of the preamp and the microphone itself.
You're optimizing your signal path or signal chain.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting the best resolution that your preamp can provide. You're getting the best sensitivity your microphone can provide. So those things
Your A
are
to D converter.
yeah.
as
So
well
those
is
are
in
all
there.
essentially taken out of the equation. If your gear is of decent quality, the sound you hear in that room tone when you hit play and you listen, 99% of the time, it's probably not the mic, probably not the preamp. It's probably the environment, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
what sort of mics are we talking about that make noise? I mean, tube mics, obviously, will create noise.
Yeah.
Dynamic mics. Here, let me give you guys a really good
Well,
example.
wait a minute.
And,
Dynamic mic, does a dynamic mic make noise?
I don't know that it makes noise.
Or
No, it
does
just
a
makes the
dynamic
preamp.
mic-
It makes the preamp work harder.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think I have a good mic example here. And sorry, Austrian Audio. We're gonna. I'm not on an Austrian Audio mic right now.
It's all right.
Oh,
here
what
is
are you
a,
doing here?
Yeah.
We're trying to demonstrate bad stuff, not good stuff.
I was working quick, and I didn't like have it out. So basically, here's a kind of a battery powered condenser mic. So this is now the boom on my headset.
Which has too much gain, by the way, right now. It's like clipping.
Yeah, that's right,
Too
exactly.
loud.
But when I come back on this, you're going to hear the noise floor of just a. All right, now do you hear the difference on this one at all?
Yeah, a whole lot less level.
Level, yeah.
a lot less level, right?
Let's say in theory we do, because we're going to hear the raw audio in the post. But right now we're hearing the meeting
you're hearing it
audio,
through-
which is
right.
noise reduction.
Right. And so because the level's less, in order to bring it up, then I have to bring my preamp up, and then up goes all that
background
noise.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And even the electronic noise in this case
So
as well.
for voiceover, a microphone of a higher sensitivity, or maybe the highest possible sensitivity, theoretically is the best microphone for a voiceover. The Rode NTG5. This is a very modern, very new mic. It's only been around for a few years. First thing I noticed with that mic is it's the highest output mic I'd ever used.
It is, isn't it?
It was like shockingly hot. That would be good then, means that you could plug that into any old cheap audio interface, which only has like a Scarlett 2i2 Gen 2 that has 48 dB of gain, and still never
I think
worry
you're right
about
and
noise,
wrong.
right?
I think you're right and wrong, because there's still the concept of self noise on the microphone. So the microphone could have a lot of output, but still a lot of self noise.
There's one
And
microphone.
so if you had a low output
Yeah.
mic with a really clean preamp,
The NTG5's pretty quiet, though. I was using it last week. I had to work up at my parents' place, and I took it with me.
yeah.
It's pretty quiet.
Yeah, so low self noise, high output, you got a really great mic.
There's one microphone that a lot of people use, and I like it too, that it stands in for a 416 all the time. the 41.6. And this is the 87.5.
Yeah.
The Audio-Technica 875R. It's a really bargain mic, and it sounds really nice. But that is its biggest
noisy.
Achilles heel. It is a noisy.
Yeah, we
mic.
tested it a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah,
Is that the one we used?
The noise is noticeable. Yeah.
And even switching between this Audio-Technica and this boom mic, I can hear the noise difference just switching between these two. Because even though this boom mic sounds like calling all cars, I can hear the hiss difference. It's clean. Yeah.
The mic you're wearing on your headset looks like just a standard headset. Nobody knows that that's actually a $1,500 microphone.
Yeah.
Underneath
This
that
thing-
foam ball. That's a Sheps.
This thing is a $1,500 mic, and it is definitely very clean. It just has a horrible EQ curve meant to make it over the top of a race car.
Right. It's for
you know.
reporters on the track, reporting,
Yeah.
covering. Exactly. So what can we recommend as best practice then for that voice actor who's being asked to tell the report back what my studio's actual noise is, or the noise level of my studio? I mean,
I say you answer a question with a question.
I would say that too,
And just
yeah.
be like, what rating would you like? Would you like the noise floor expressed in peak or RMS? Which is something that we should just talk about right away.
okay, let's talk about the difference between those two, and can be quite
So
different.
basically, it's a difference between the instant level,
How loud,
very
the
fast,
loudest part. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
or the average
Mm-hmm.
level. RMS is average, and peak is instantaneous.
Which is what's happening right now.
So you could have So you could have a high noise, or your noise floor, if expressed in the peak level, would theoretically be higher or a worse number than the RMS or the average, because you're going to have an average.
Okay, here's another question then. Based on Twisted Wave, I'm looking at Twisted Wave on my screen as we speak, and on the right-hand side, it says the level meter, and it says RMS at the bottom. So is that meter on Twisted Wave an RMS or a peak
It's
meter?
got to be RMS.
It's an RMS
Yeah.
meter.
Well, it's
right.
both.
So an RMS meter is more like a VU meter. It's an averaging meter. Yeah.
It's both. So the number at the top of that VU meter is a peak momentary number, and the number at the bottom of the twisted wave meter is the RMS reading.
Okay.
And so it shows you both all the time,
Right, okay.
which is kind of handy. I wish Adobe Audition would do that. It's really frustrating that Audition does not show you RMS or LUFS metering. Now you can get plugins. And what's a good free
Yeah.
one? Ulean, is that the free?
Yeah, that's the one everybody
Ulean's a
uses,
free
yeah.
one it's perfectly good enough and easy to license and tells you what you need to do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And one thing to be clear is that like LUFS and LKFS are a version of averaging, but they are
over time.
well, and also they're frequency dependent because they're very much voice oriented, because they're directed at dialogue normalization for program, for TV and whatnot. So they are an average, but they also weight it. And we talked about that earlier. The weighting is like applying an EQ curve to the measurement so that you're focusing on a certain frequency range, so to speak.
So LUFS
and then
and
you're right, Robbo, also they have a timing to it. The timing of the average is a little bit different probably.
Well, that's the thing. So I wanted to get into that too. There's so many different aspects about measuring noise. So you're in Twisted Wave AP. If you hit your file menu and drop down, and you'll find something called Analyze. This is going to give you much more useful information, because it's going to give you, first of all, it's going to analyze the entire file, whatever it is. If it's an hour long, it's going to look at the whole file. Now you can select a tiny bit of it and analyze it, but generally we analyze the whole thing. And now you're going to get all this information. And you may see a peak amplitude of minus 17. In my case, based on the last file I just recorded and edited, it has a peak of 0 dB, because at some point there was a transient loud noise, probably me laughing or snapping, and it hit 0. And then I see LUFS, which is what Robert was talking about. That's that average level calculation that's weighted based on hearing. You said it's more voice centric, right, Robert?
Yeah, because it's for TV programming and yep.
Then below that, I see average RMS. So now I see two numbers, both of them measuring essentially an average level, but in this case, very different readings. The LUFS is at minus 20, almost minus 27, and the RMS is minus 35. So now what numbers are we looking at here when we're measuring noise?
Right. So if someone asks you what your noise floor is, you got to ask them, how do you want me to report this to you? Because if not, almost less is more. And if you had to report back to them, then you give them an average number. Because that's always going to look better, and probably the one based on LUFS is probably the one that looks the best. I'm gonna guess.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, in this case, so then you also have minimum RMS. So in Twisted Wave, that's essentially what is the sustained minimum average level, and that essentially gives you your noise floor. Essentially, again, assuming your peak is at 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my opinion is take that file, bring it so the peaks are at 0, normalize it to 0, then do this measurement. And when you look at that minimum RMS, which is how loud the noise is at a sustained period of time, that to me is the most honest possible measurement of what the noise floor is.
In a pure recording, once you figure out the mic preamp setting for your peaked or normalized setting, and you say, okay, so normalizing it, I have to bring it up by 6 dB or whatever. You can almost just do the calculation in your head.
You can just add that.
I peak out at -6, so whatever the number is, I'm going to add 6 to it.
Right.
So let me hold you there for a sec, because I'm looking at AP and I can see him stroking his beard, which always tells me that he's thinking. And I'm just wondering, what questions have you got, AP? I can see it might be helpful for those listening as well. What?
I just put a file up on Twisted Wave of a session I did yesterday, and I'm looking at the numbers, and it's got here peak amplitude is -12.16 dB. True peak amplitude is the same, -12.15.
True peak, that's another.
Yeah,
it is, isn't it?
Then LUFS is sitting at 29.97. Average RMS power. No, are we looking at that? No, minimum, aren't we? We're looking at minimum RMS power, and it says to me, infinite or inf.0 dB. Maximum RMS power is -23.13 dB.
Maximum RMS is an interesting number. I never look at that, and I've never seen anybody call for it as a spec. But what I do look a lot at is minimum RMS. And what you're telling me is and now this is the issue. In the duration of your file, at some point, you silenced
there's nothing.
pieces of audio. So you have what we call digital black.
That's why you got the -infinity.
You have a -infinity because it measures the digital black and goes, that's the quietest moment.
Well, it's interesting because I don't use silence.
But you have a gate or something knocked it.
No, I've got noise. I have room noise. So I actually captured, like, shut the booth door, open up the mic.
Oh, this was in your booth?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised by that, I'll be honest with you.
Something made it think that there's zilch, nothing there
Well,
at all.
I got one more question.
Infinity
What is the RMS window number at the bottom of the box?
RMS window is 200 milliseconds.
Change it to 2000. Just that's the longest window measurement.
Okay, let's do 2000.
And it'll change the numbers on the screen immediately.
Okay. Now it's changed. So we're looking at minimum. Is that right? Minimum RMS.
Yeah. Tell me minimum
is -33.87 dB.
Now, isn't that interesting? Okay. So what that means is, if the RMS window, what that means is, what's the length of time that it's listening to, and then calculating off that window of time, right? And in Twisted Wave,
the average,
the Twisted Wave software nicely gives you an option to change that right there in that window.
Yeah,
many programs may not or don't. So now you can. This is another way to fudge the living shit out of the number.
Yeah,
if you want your minimum RMS numbers to be flattering, choose a short window, the shortest window possible, and it will drop.
And then analyze the quietest moment. The shortest
exactly,
window.
Even more so. But if you want to be the most honest, well, what is the most honest?
Well, the most honest then would be to do the minimum RMS and tell them over X amount of time.
Over
that would
1
be the
second.
most honest. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so all these numbers you guys are hearing, probably many of you for the first time. And this is the problem with this whole conversation of what is the noise floor of your studio? Like these, they come up on Facebook all the time. And I just say, listen, guys, and we all have to be on the same page as to what that actually means, how it's measured, And as we've just discussed, there's a lot of variables. And
there's other stuff too. Think about this. I rather have a higher noise floor of a nice sounding smooth than some like lower noise of like.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So the quality of the noise, and it's funny in like hi-fi
Quality of the
circles, you
noise.
hear about people talking about hi-fi noise,
Right.
and whatnot. But there's so many factors, and I think it's ridiculous for honestly some of these places to be sweating the voice talent over trying to give them numbers. Like there's some empirical way of determining the quality of something just by numbers.
A simple minus negative noise
It's
floor
not
number.
really possible because you just got to hear it and go like, I can use that or I can't use that.
Yeah.
And generally, yeah, like certain things are going to fall in general numbers. But if you like pop your mic on and look at your meter and you have a peak meter or whatever, and it's like, it just like sits down low at like minus 70, minus even 60, you're probably good.
Yeah.
You know?
You are probably good.
And if at your setting you get a reasonable level, and then when you stop talking and you stop breathing and it drops down to minus 70, or a good meter doesn't even meter so low, some of the meters only start at like minus 40 or so,
Right.
you shouldn't see anything. So,
But
it's like,
But many, many voice actors are on a TLM 103 or a Rode NT1 or some other mic that has no high pass, no filter, and it measures down to 10,
all the low
10
noise.
hertz. Right? So now you have this instrument of noise measurement that I always call the TLM 103 the seismograph of microphones.
I was going to say, if you live in California, it's even worse.
Yeah. And so now you've got this instrument that's designed to measure or listen to the entire range of sound below the range of human hearing to above the range of human hearing. And that's all affecting the meter. So I get so many people who come to me, they're like, oh my gosh, my noise floor is at minus 32. I'm screwed. Oh my God, I'm going to need to get weather stripping for my windows. This is the logical conclusion I get.
High pass filter.
Guess what?
Gone.
You have a standing wave in your space that you don't even know is there because it's like nose blindness to a smell. You stop smelling certain things, If you go on vacation, you come home and you smell your own house, you're like,
Jeez.
How
Who
my house
farted?
smells
Yeah,
like?
that's
Yeah.
right.
Jesus, right? It's true. It happens all the time. We come to my apartment like,
Is that why my farts don't
Man, did I
smell?
leave the dog in the house? Fucking hell, it
Yeah.
stinks in here.
yeah. So like with that rumbly sound, like it's in your life, it's in your environment, it's there all the time. Now, some people are really sensitive to it and it makes them crazy, but most people tune it out. You don't see it, but the microphone, boy, does it hear it all. And you have this crazy wavy thing going through your waveform. And that is so easy for any engineer to fix. So is it okay for the actor to high pass filter their file before they send in a sample and say, this is
at
my raw
a
audio?
low, like minus
50 or 60 or something.
hertz or 50, in there, especially with a gradual slope, and you've got no problem at all.
But nobody knows what you mean when you just said that. What does a gradual slope mean?
So rather than a cliff, if you're looking at the filter, rather than being a cliff straight up and down, you want a nice gradual. Well, it would be
Roll
if
up.
you're looking from
Why?
left to right, it would be a nice gradual rise, I suppose. If you're going from
Why do you need it to be
But
gradual?
you don't know what it is with certain mics. It's just a switch you flip. But generally, the mics are going to have less steep ones.
Yeah,
when you
that's
look
right.
at your EQ, you can see it. You should just know that when you have a very steep filter, any filter, there's always an equal and opposite reaction to things. So as you have a steeper cliff of the cutoff, you're
You're
going
gonna
to
cut
reflect
straight
things
off.
back into the other side. And so the gradual ones are more transparent,
So
essentially. And
the FFT filter in Adobe Audition, I shouldn't use it at 60 hertz with an extremely, like a vertical line.
You might get away with it at 60, depending on what you're doing, depending on what you're working on.
Well, I'm talking about voiceover.
it's gonna have a like you know how some filters they even show you when you drop the curves tight, the part right before it pops
Yeah.
up.
That's
Yeah.
the resonance.
It literally gives you a peak of
yeah,
energy.
it's called the
before
resonance. Mhm.
Yeah, it's like the same thing happens with a speaker with porting. It's almost the same physics, I believe.
That's what I love about the high pass filter and Twisted Wave, by the way. It's not actually Twisted Wave's high pass filter. It's Apple's. It's the Apple high pass filter.
Oh, is that right?
It has a cutoff filter and it has a resonance setting. So you can
Oh, yeah.
control both. You can control how much and what frequency, And you can add a resonance bump if you want, or a dip.
Right. That's big for those synth guys. They love the resonance
do, don't
filter.
they?
Like
Yeah.
that's yeah.
It's also a way to artificially give yourself a little bit of extra.
Little
A
low
little
end.
extra
Yeah.
something.
It's like, have you played? Are you probably? You do a bit of music. Have you played with Fab Filter on Waves? You know, the little resonance thing. Oh, wow, 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 and you can put it in tempo and all that sort of stuff. The synth guys love it. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, Andrew,
Yes, this is my.
now when somebody asks you, what's the noise floor of your studio, what are you going to tell them?
Nothing.
Yeah. Admit nothing.
Your first question is over what period
what
of time
settings?
is your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to have you're going to have a list of like 6 questions.
Yeah.
What is the windowing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the, are we measuring LUFS?
Yeah, what are we
or RMS?
measuring? How are we measuring it? Yeah. Whereabouts are we
What
measuring
scale,
it?
what weighting, and what what scale, what weighting, and what window of time.
It's interesting. I must do this again though, using a different setup because so the minimum at 33.87 minus 33.87 minimum RMS
Over 2 full
that
seconds.
is using over 2,000 milliseconds.
Right. That means that file, is this an edited file?
Yeah.
So over the course of that edited file, which doesn't have a bunch of room tone, right?
Yeah.
It's mostly your voice. During that segment of audio, there's almost no segments. If there's no segment in there 2 full seconds long, that is silence, right?
Okay.
There's no drop. At no point during that file do you just literally stop talking and have a 2-second gap, right? So when you measure it, it's not finding a segment of 2 seconds of room tone because it ain't there, right? So you have to measure this before editing because you need to have some room tone to measure. You have to have that room tone to begin with. So if you picked another file, Andrew, that had some room tone on it, just, something.
And
that's
even
weird.
more to the point, I was going to bring up, like, be careful of some other things. For example, dither. What is dither?
Oh no,
Dither
Don't go
is
there.
noise. It's noise. So that's, maybe it's low level and below the levels that we're talking about that are going to affect it, but that is adding noise to your signal. And then the other one to be careful of is if you compress your voice, you are reducing the signal to noise ratio.
yes.
You are inherently bringing up your noise floor by using a compressor.
Because all the high stuff is
Yeah.
pushing down towards the noise anyway. That's right.
Pushing
That's
that
right.
down, bring the whole thing up, however you want to
A
express
compressor
it.
is designed to reduce dynamic range. So what is that? Signal to noise ratio. You add more compression, you're reducing that dynamic range of signal to noise. The noise gets louder.
That's right.
Right.
Which is why I say, please don't compress and send me your voice tracks because it only makes it, if your noise floor is shit, it makes it harder for me to get rid of it.
And then on the flip side, you can use an expander to fake a lower noise floor.
And I do that all the time. Not only perfectly, but I always try to get away with murder.
An expander and not a gate, because a gate's going to have that hard on off. And the
Yes.
expander will
Every engineer,
gradually get in and out.
their skin crawls if they detect a gate.
Oh,
on the
that's
audio.
that's a big no-no.
It is the biggest no-no of all. It's as soon as they detect that.
Ooh, this is
So-
interesting. Okay, so I've just laid another one up. This is roughly edited, but not dramatically. Minimum RMS minus 58.82.
And what's the
I'd
window?
say that's a
The window is 2,000 milliseconds.
Make the window 1,000. I don't know what is the default. It might be 200, but generally
What's the-
they
Yeah, it's
use
200,
shorter
yeah.
windows typically.
yeah. What's the window for like a VU meter?
I don't know, but try 200 milliseconds, Andrew, because I feel like that's more likely what is common.
Okay, well, the 200 milliseconds. This sample is,
300 milliseconds, by the way.
Oh,
is a
okay.
VU meter.
let's go to
It's around 300.
let's go to 300. 300. Here we go. 300 milliseconds. Okay, so now I've got minimum RMS of minus 76.43 dB.
That's very good.
Which I would say is a really good setting.
It's excellent.
I mean, minus 70. I'd
Oh,
say anything like
Tell
60
me again,
and
what
below.
was the peak on that? What was the peak?
And the peak amplitude is minus 6.6 dB.
Okay, so we subtract -6 from.
Oh, no, just go true peak. Well, it's the same
Well,
anyway. It's the
true
same.
peak versus
Yeah.
peak is they're so close.
And then the
They're
LUFS
some-
was minus 26.25.
Okay, so that's just the average of how loud you are.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. People will sometimes be told to send in a file with a LUFS of a certain value, and that is not unless you're processing your audio, that's not acceptable as a spec.
Yeah.
You cannot expect an actor to deliver a raw performance at a specific average level.
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous requirement. I've seen it come up. Video game people will say we want peaks around -18, and the actor doesn't know exactly what to do.
So what are they going to do? Put a limiter on it? I mean, what?
Right.
No.
Right.
No, thank you.
Right.
No.
They're expecting to have an engineer sit there with their knob with their hand on the preamp knob, and that's just not possible for an actor to do. And so,
But why are they asking for these specs? I mean, if you've got an engineer working on it, does it matter?
I don't know.
I think
know.
it's ridiculous.
Crazy.
I honestly think it's ridiculous that they do this because they're asking for something that's impossible, and they just force these actors to either freak out or start over doctoring and doing other nefarious means of faking numbers that they think they're
trying
to
to
deliver.
fudge it. Yeah.
Because you can't really deliver this in a reasonable way.
You're asking them to do something
Andrew,
stupid. Yeah, absolutely.
Andrew, you said a noise floor of -70, right? But that's got to be that's an average. So that was an RMS or a LUFS reading
RMS,
you were given. And then if you add back, if you peak normalize your voice out of it, you're probably going to add another 6 decibels, and you're probably going to get pretty close to that -60 range.
Yeah.
And most people in a home studio, I dare you to do better than -60 unless you are putting $10,000 into your booth. What do you think?
I'll tell you what, it's power. I'm telling you, it's power. How clean your power is. I think it's a lot because I will get recordings of a 41.6 into a Scarlett, and sometimes it's -75 dB all day on noise floor, and I'm just like, damn, that's clean.
So you're saying are you suggesting like a power conditioner? Something like that?
I think it's just luckily, some people are lucky. They live in a more rural area. There's not a lot of dirty power from neighbors. They're not
Have
in a
you ever
condo.
noticed that if you have your laptop plugged in, it's worse than if you unplug your laptop and let it run off the battery?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Yeah. Like you want the best noise possible, clean power, unplug your laptop.
Unplug your laptop
And run on
float
battery.
it and just battery.
do your session with the battery instead of the power, yeah.
Yeah. Here's another thing just to add to this file. I remember I recorded and I actually added gain. I added about 9 dB of gain to it. So I really recorded peak level of minus
-80.
15, I reckon.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So it was actually minus 15, and then I added gain to it to bring it up to -6.
Yeah.
So based on the fact that would affect the noise floor as well, I would imagine. If I was,
It'll bring it all up. Yeah,
Well, it's
everything
just
comes up with
signal
it.
to noise ratio. When you
You're-
increase
Yeah.
the signal, you increase
If you don't
the
do
noise.
any compression or any expansion, your ratio will stay the same,
Right.
at least of the acoustic noise floor. And you're just bringing it up or down relative to, like, oh, here's louder noise and louder me.
It's
all
so
together.
interesting because like even microphones they do have different values for how quiet they are. And some of them brag quite heavily. Rode is one of them. They brag a lot about how quiet the Rode NT1
is, yeah.
mic is, its self noise rating. And the TLM103, also a very quiet mic. But in a real world scenario, you'd probably get a better average noise reading from a 41.6 whose self noise is like -16.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 16 dB versus the Rode, which is maybe 4 dB simply because the 41.6 isn't hearing as much information.
Yeah.
Right.
The NT1 is hearing, like I said,
Everything.
from the bottom of the ocean
Yeah.
to well
The-
above, and it's hearing everything.
The 416, and this is indicative of most microphones that have smaller diaphragms. It's much harder to get low noise out of a small diaphragm. Large diaphragm mics, one of the big reasons for them is they're easier to get a better noise floor. So those mics are going to give you a better electronic reading. But again, I think like you said at the very beginning, the
real world.
majority of your noise is coming from environmental stuff, and the 416 is going to just not hear a ton of that.
Yeah.
Not just because it doesn't hear it on its its cutoff on the low end, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But also because it's so directional
Right.
Yeah.
as well.
The other thing I also throw into the mix, the microphone was the 818, the OC 818. But I think this is the kicker. The preamp I used was the 1073 Neve.
Huh.
And that's full of transformers. So I'm guessing you get quite a bit of noise out
It
of
would
it.
get noise, yeah.
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 Transformers always have noise.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So that wasn't even the cleanest signal path you could get. Your Grace or something would
Be better.
Probably be quite a bit
If
lower.
I use the Grace, it'll be a lot cleaner than
Or
that.
to wrap it all up, the Passport VO, which apparently, based on some measurements, it measures out very, very, very,
Very well.
pleasingly compared to, let's just say, the Avalon. The place where I had that gear measured was a place where they test and tune and repair Avalon preamps all day long, right? So let's just say the best money can buy in terms of preamp circuits, And
Especially possibly because you can take the Passport VO, unplug your computer, power it off the computer. Now you're floating.
And that's precisely what they were doing in this case. They were using a laptop to run the Passport with no power. It was running on battery. So we were getting the cleanest power. And then we were measuring, the tone was coming in the XLR and passing out one of the balanced outputs for the monitors. So it was running all the way through and out the monitor output and then into the precision.
So that was the whole path, the preamp,
right.
the A to D, the D to A, and the
Auxiliary out.
the preamp of the speaker output.
And the thing is, we don't have a way to calibrate what the input and outputs on the preamp of the device should actually be. So we had the gain at neutral at 12 o'clock. We don't know what the gain was truly set to. It could have been at 40 dB of gain, 38. I mean, we don't know, 45. Right. So we don't know what the gain is. And that was somebody, one of our listeners, wrote in. He's like, well, I mean, it doesn't mean much because I don't know what your gain setting was. And I said, well, we were all comparing this in context with an Avalon 737, right? Which is a very clean, very, very low distortion. We haven't talked about distortion. We've talked about distortion in another
That'll be another one. Yeah. Let's not start down that road right now.
The noise reading was comparable to the 737. The 737 is around minus 92. The Passport was in the margin of error, minus 89, minus 90. So it was very close. And essentially at that low of a
self-noise. But the price is
noise,
around 1,000 or 600.
Yeah.
No, more like 1,500 and 600.
The 737 is like 2,500
Yeah,
plus.
I was going to say that way up.
Yeah. So really it compares with boutique really high quality preamps. And at those numbers, they're negligible in terms of your noise. Like when you record something and we're all talking about where's the noise coming from, at any of this gear we're talking about, it's not the preamp. It is not the preamp, so.
It's the train that I'm in when I hook up.
It's the train Robert's calling on and the phone patch that he's passing through on the way from the train.
And the neighbor's internet connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Hey, listen, speaking of microphones, before we go, a friend of mine in Potts Point, which is a very high polloi suburb of Sydney.
Very wealthy part of Sydney.
Check out, can you see the number plate on this car? Will it focus?
No, I can't see it.
Can't make it out.
The number plate is RODE, RODE.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'd be Freeman's. What is it? What's the car?
Looks like a
Jesus,
Bentley.
I have no idea.
Actually, no, it looks like a Rolls.
I'm not a car fanatic. I have no idea. I'll send you guys the photo. You can have a look.
It's a Bentley or a Rolls.
Yeah.
Ask Rowan Atkinson. He'll tell you.
And do you know who that is? That'd be Freeman, who owns RODE.
Right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Hello, RODE.
Hello, model.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite, with thanks to Tribooth and Austrian Audio. Recorded using Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Robbo. Got your own audio issues? Just ask Robbo.com. With tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, proaudiosuite.com.